So for our topic today, we're going to talk about punishment prediction error in depression. I'm Tania Wilkinson.
I'm Derek Fairbanks.
And I'm Connor Alder.
Okay, so to start, for our topic, we looked at various research done previous to our construction of this experiment and learned that there is a correlation between depression and reward prediction error. The correlation was that individuals who suffer from depression will have a more difficult time with reward prediction. And because of this, we were curious to see if there would be a similar correlation between depression and punishment prediction error. So in our study, we aim to investigate whether individuals with depression will exhibit defects in the evaluation of two punishments and have difficulty determining which one is worse. We believe that by exploring this potential relationship, we will have a better understanding of the cognitive process that involves depression as well as the associated symptoms. So some further background points to better understand our experiment are what reward prediction error and punishment prediction error are. So reward prediction error is the difference between expected and actual rewards received from a decision. So an example of this would be specifically if an individual who doesn't experience depression, they will more quickly be able to determine what decisions provide reward over an individual who has depression. And so for punishment prediction error, it's similar in that the difference between the expected and actual outcome of the punishment from a particular behavior or action. But we infer that the individual who experiences depression will have a harder time determining which decision provides a punishment. So punishment prediction error is a term commonly used in the field of psychology and neuroscience to describe the brain's response when an individual's expectations about the consequences of their behavior are not met, resulting in the experience of a punishment that is greater or less anticipated. And then it is widely recognized that individuals with depression may experience difficulties with reward prediction, and that reward prediction plays a critical role in learning, performance, and decision making. So given the information that we've gathered, we hypothesize that there is a positive correlation between depressive symptoms and punishment prediction error.
Okay. And so let's go to our methods and how we're going to do it. What we're going to first do is we're going to get a simple random sample of 50 adults aged 18 to 65. We're going to obtain this sample using the census record, and then we can randomly choose participants and we can contact them and ask that they participate in our study. And we're expecting, due to the prevalence of depression in the population, that there will be a good variability in this sample, that there'll be several individuals that have more of a severe depression, some that have some mild symptoms. Because we're not using depression as a categorical variable, so we don't need to determine if they're diagnosed or not. Rather, we're using it as a quantitative variable. So we're going to measure it using the Beck Depression Inventory, which will give them a score. And then depending on their score, we'll see how many depressive symptoms that they show. And then that's how we're going to measure depression, and we're going to measure how that correlates with punishment prediction error. And so how we're going to measure punishment prediction error is using this game that we thought of. A lot of the studies that studied reward prediction error used a similar type of game that had different rewards where they could draw from different stacks and get a different reward depending on the stack they drew from. So we designed a similar game to test punishment prediction error, where they're drawing from 3 different stacks that are different degrees of punishment. And so we get the participants and we give them a net amount of this fake money. We tell them that their goal is to increase in this game. Have incentives with different prizes that they can get at the end of the study to incentivize them to do their best. So as you can see in this picture of the game, there are 3 different piles, and each pile will have different levels of punishment, but the participant doesn't know this. One deck will have bad cards, another deck will have worse, and the other one will have even worse cards, the worst ones. And so they were consistently be losing money in this game. It'll be really frustrating experience because their goal is to increase their money. But they were going to see if they can learn to consistently choose from the pile that gives the least punishment to learn to avoid the worst punishment. And so they're expecting that the people that have more depressive symptoms will take longer to learn this.
Okay. So now on to our results. What we first did is took the data that we collected from this game and graphed it on a scatter plot as shown here. And what you can see is that we use the Beck's Depression Inventory, or BDI, score as our predictor variable on the x-axis, and higher scores there are indicative of people with more severe depression on the right. And on the y-axis, we used number of cards drawn, which was our outcome variable. And the blue dots on the scatter plot represent cards drawn from the bad pile, whereas the gray dots represent cards drawn from the worst pile, and the orange dots represent cards drawn from the worst pile. So we wanted to look at the correlation, and so we drew 3 trend lines using a linear regression model, and correlation coefficients were calculated using Pearson's R with a significance level of 0.05. And what we found was that there was a negative correlation, a strong, significant negative correlation between BDI and cards drawn from the bad deck. And you can see that in blue. So that means that people with a lower BDI score, or people with less severe depression, tended to draw more from this pile of cards. We also found a positive correlation in the worse deck of cards, between the worst deck of cards and BDI score, though this one was not quite as strong. And then interestingly, we found a strong positive correlation with between BDI score and cards drawn from the worst deck of cards. So this means that people with more severe depression, or with a higher BDI score, tended to draw cards from the worst deck more often than the other decks. So this confirmed our hypothesis. And we can draw from this that people with depression are more likely to make errors in punishment prediction. And this is significant and important because it provides greater insight into the cognitive processes underlying depression. And this opens the door for improved treatment strategies for people with depression. And we believe that's the most important part of our findings. Thank you.